let me record the session. So I was telling you about observables, right? In order to get the value from an observable, what we need to do?
Have to subscribe it first.
We need to subscribe it, then we'll get the response from that. How to create an observable? Let me just create one variable called name dollar, and it is of the type observable of string. Okay. And how can I assign a value to this observable using what? Using of operator. Okay, then only you can assign some value to this observable. For example, Anusha. Okay, and implements on init lifecycle hook, and then ng on init, and it is of the type void. Okay, and this dot name dollar dot. How to get the value from this?
Subscribe.
Subscribe. Okay, what does the subscribe will take? Will take two callback functions. One is for the successful response and one is for the failure in case of error. Okay, this callback function is for successful response. Console.log of response. Are you able to see?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, yesterday I was telling to you about subjects, right? Subjects are also nothing but it is one kind of observable. Okay. And how do we create a subject? Sample subject. Okay. And it is of the type what? Subject.
String.
Subject of type string equal to what we need to give here? New subject we need to show in order to initialize it as a subject. Otherwise, what value will you get? You will get it as undefined if you are using the not keyword. If you are not using anything, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you try to do console log of sample subject, you can see it is printed as a subject, right? And you can see these are all the methods and values that are available here. Something like closed, stopped, observers, something like that. Okay. Now, in order to update the value in this sample behavior subject, we use one method called dot next. Okay. But if you want to get the current value, then you need to use like this dot sample subject dot subscribe. Like observables, we also subscribe and we can get the value. And in order to update each value, what we need, which method we will using? We will be using next method. Okay. This dot sample subject dot next of response. Are you able to see here?
Yeah.
Okay. Suppose if you want to update the value of a subject, you use one method called dot next. And if you just subscribe to it, you will get the latest value called sample subject response. Okay. Suppose if you again update it with the next value. Okay. Suppose this dot sample subject dot next of Zahira is the current value now. Okay, now you can see this subscribe will get triggered again and this callback will triggered again since the value of the subject has been changed. Okay, now you can see Zahira response from subject. Are you able to see?
Yeah.
Okay, suppose if I update with next value, for example, this dot sample subject dot next of Santosh. Okay, are you able to see?
Yeah.
So whenever you update the value of a sample subject, the subscribe block will get triggered again and again. That is the meaning. Understood?
Yeah.
Okay. This is subjects in Angular. Okay. Now we have one more topic called behavior subjects. Behavior subjects. The difference between subject and behavior subject is nothing but you need to give some default value for behavior subject. Right now, if you not update these three values, what will be the value that will be present in the sample subject? Suppose if I comment out these lines, okay, and what is the value that will be present in the sample subject?
Undefined.
It's
Undefined.
okay, but if you are declaring any variable with a behavior subject, you need to give some default value. Its value cannot be undefined. You need to give some initial value. Okay, let me just create one. Sample behavior subject. Okay, and it is of the type behavior subject of, let me give it as a string. Okay, equal to new behavior subject. Now now you need to give some default value, otherwise it will show an error. Okay, I don't know why it is not showing an error, but you need to give some default value. For example, let me give, okay, you will give the default value like this. Okay, whatever value you want, you can just give it. And you can just, in order to get a value from the observable, what you need to do?
These dots are behavioral.
In order to get a value from an observable. So subject is an observable as well. Behavior subjects are also observables. Okay. In order to get the value, what we will do? We need to use one method called subscribe. Okay. And you can just print the response. And let me just do console.log of response sample behavior subject response. Are you able to see here?
Yeah.
Behavior subject, sample behavior subject. So whenever you are defining a behavior subject means you need to give some default value. That is the one difference. And you need to use subscribe like for sample subjects or for observable, how you will be using subscription. Similarly, for behavior subjects as well, you will be using the subscription. Okay. And apart from that, if you want to get the current value of a behavior subject, you have one method called dot value. Okay. Console.log of this dot sample behavior subject dot value will give the what is the current value of the behavior subject. Okay. Console current value. Are you able to see here?
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to get the current value, then it will print the current value. But the subscription will get repeatedly called whenever the value of a behavior subject will get changed. Okay, but this is just for getting what is the current value at this line number 30. That's it. That's the difference. Okay, suppose if I want to update a value, what will I do? Which method is used for updating the value?
Dot next.
Dot next method. Okay, you can use just dot next and you can give it are you able to see?
Yeah.
So whenever the value of a behavior subject has been changed, the subscribe block will get triggered again, telling that its value has been changed. Understood?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, can you tell me how to get a value from an observable?
Not subscriber.
Dot subscribe. Which operator is used for the assigning the value for an observable?
Off.
Off.
Just a moment. Yeah, in order to get a value from a sample behavior subject, what we need to do?
Get the value.
Just subscribe. Okay.
Subscribe. Okay.
Or if you want to get the current value, how can you get it? Current value of a behavior subject?
Dot value.
Dot value function. What is the difference between behavior subject and subject?
It having default. It having default value.
Behavior subject takes a default value, but the subject doesn't take. And even
Doesn't.
dot value function is not available for subject. Okay. Dot value function is only available for behavior subject.
Okay.
Okay. And you understood, right? It's must and mandatory to give the new of the subject. Otherwise, what happens if you are doing dot next of something undefined dot next, which will throw an error. Okay. So you need to initialize this class. Then only you will get what are all the properties that are available for a subject will get attached to this observable. And it will behave like a subject and then we can access it. Okay. Similarly, even for the observable, if you are not giving this off operator and if you are just doing subscribe, undefined dot subscribe, which will throw an error. Understood?
Got it.
Doubt?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Now, let me tell you how to make API calls in Angular. Okay. So for this, what do you generally understand by an API call? Suppose if I'm hitting this URL, you can see something like HTTPS something, right?
Yeah.
So, or if you just hit YouTube, okay. But internally, if you just copy it and wait a moment. If you just check it, what is it is written HTTPS, correct?
Yeah.
If you go to any banking website, let me copy this URL. Okay. And what you can see HTTPS, correct? So
Yeah.
this is nothing but this is some network protocol, this HTTP something, okay? And all the API calls contain this HTTP. Whatever in the worldwide, whenever you hit any URL, this HTTP is responsible for making the API call, okay? Similarly, to make API calls in Angular, we have one thing called HTTP client. What is that? HTTP
HTTP
client.
client.
Using this HTTP client, we will be making API calls in our Angular application. Okay. So let me just pick some free API URLs. So you can see this URL, right? Let me just copy it. And in order to use, let me show you how to make an API call. So I said you need to use one thing called HTTP client, correct? So every class contains something called constructor, which is used for the initialization purposes. Okay, suppose if there are any dependencies or anything that we will be injecting into the constructor and we will be using them. Okay, so every class contains something called as a constructor. Okay, and this HTTP client, what we need to do, we need to inject them in this constructor and use them. Okay, so since they are something like injectable things, inbuiltly given by the Angular, they has to be injected in the constructor and then only we can use them. Okay, let me show you.
TV থেকে
So you can see there was an inbuilt clause called HTTP client, which was given by the Angular. Okay, this entire class was present inbuiltly by the Angular and it contains several methods which we can consume. Okay, so this acts like a service and it contains one keyword called injectable, which means that we need to inject them in our class in order to use it. That is the meaning. Okay.
Okay.
So for that, first I said you need to inject, right? So injecting, you will do it in the constructor. What is injection means? What you want to inject? I am telling you need to inject HTTP client. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Some alternate name you will give for this HTTP client. For example, public HTTP. Okay, this is the variable that can be used instead of this HTTP client. This is just the injection in the constructor. Now, these will contain all the properties of this HTTP client and it has some methods. Okay, so let me tell you the examples of some methods. Get method means we are requesting some data from some channels. For example, if you just hit the YouTube, okay, what you are doing, you are getting some details. Am I correct?
Yes.
So this is get. Okay. There are some operations called post and put. Post. Suppose
Okay.
if there is a record or if you are trying to upload one video into your website, which means you are requesting to save this information, right? Those kind of stuff include post calls. Or let me just give you in a simple words. For example, there is one website, okay, and you need to log in into that, correct? Sure. Yeah, here there is sign in, right? So you will be providing the details here. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Though you that means you are giving some information for the server, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Those kind of operations are called post operations. You are
Yes.
telling either to save them or you are giving either to validate them. Okay. One more example is you will request for changing your password. Do you remember? You will give
Yeah.
your current password and new password. Okay. All those kinds of operations are called post operations.
Okay.
Suppose if you are trying to delete your Facebook account, what you are doing from Facebook repository, you are deleting your account, correct? So those kind of operations are called delete operations. Okay.
Okay.
And even in the Facebook, initially you have given some information of you. Okay. And later you want to give some more information about you. So what you are doing, basically you are updating your info. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those kind of operations are again post operations. Understood? Get is just used for getting some information. Suppose if you hit some API, it is giving some information, right? Without giving explicitly anything, you are getting some information. Okay, that is called getters. Or if you just give application ID reference, you'll get all the information related to that application. Those are getters. But if you are giving some information which has to be saved or updated, those are called as post operations. If you are deleting some information, that involves delete operations. Got it?
Got it.
So this HTTP client contains all those methods: get method, post method, delete method, everything. Okay. We will do a sample of get method. Okay. And let me just comment out this everything and let me show you. So we have one method called this dot http dot get. Okay. And I'll just hover on it and I'll show you. What is the return type of this method? Can you tell me?
Right.
What is the return type of this method?
Wide.
Void. Where is this method starting at?
Starting from this
Get
dot
you.
ht get you.
HTTP client dot get is the
Get
starting,
you.
correct?
Yeah.
That round brace. Where it is ending?
Observable.
Here it is ending, correct?
Yeah.
So what is the return type?
Observable.
Observable. Okay.
Observe.
The return type of this API is an observable. That means in order to get the data from this API, what we need to do? In order to get the data, in order to get an data from the observable, what will you do?
To subscribe it.
You will be subscribing them.
Dot
Okay.
subscribe.
Yeah. So this get method, what you will do, you will just give the URL. Okay. Let me just copy this URL. So in order to, this is an observable. In order to get the value from this observable, what we need to do? We need to give subscribe. Okay. So subscribe takes two callbacks function. In case of successful response, in case of error response, correct?
Yeah.
Console.log of response. Let me give it as success response. Okay. And in order to get the error, we will take one more callback and it will give you console.log of error response. Okay. Now, one second. Now, are you able to see? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Type.
In order to see, in order to use HTTP client in your application, you need to import one module called HTTP client module. Okay, then your HTTP client will start working in your application. Imports, modules, and all you will be giving in imports, components, pipes, everything you will be giving in the declaration block. Understood?
Yeah.
Okay. In what I have done, I have just injected HTTP client in my constructor and I just used get method and I just subscribe to it. In case of successful response will get called. In case of failure block will get triggered. Suppose let me remove one entry. Okay. Now, are you able to see the error response?
Yes, HTTP.
Okay, you can see HTTP failure, unknown error. That URL is not correct. That's why we are getting an error. Understood? Any doubt, anyone?
No.
Yeah, Shekhar, Anusha, Santosh.
Little bit confusing, but we got some more things.
You got little bit idea, right?
Yeah.
Only
It
with the
takes.
practice you will get it.
Yeah.
Okay, you just need to understand what is the return type. Okay, then with the
Okay.
return type, you will understand. You know that get methods return type is what. You just need to understand when will you get the return. You are not understanding properly. You can see the
Yeah.
get is starting here, get method, and it is ending here. After ending, to define the return type, what will be there? Colon with the return type will be there. What is the return
Yeah.
type? Observable. That means in order to get the response from this API, what I need to do? I need to do some subscription and it will print the response for me. That's it. And for this HTTP, you need to use what you need to do. You need to inject some HTTP client in your constructor. The alternate name for the HTTP client is HTTP. That's it. If you whatever name you want to give, it's just like pub variable only. Whatever name you want to give, you can just use it and then get the methods from that. Okay. And
Okay.
in order for this HTTP client to work, what you need to do, you need to import this particular module.
Yeah.
Okay. Let
Okay.
me show you if there is anything. You can see here, right? There is some methods called request, delete. Okay. Get is the one we have used here now. Head,
Yeah.
different types are there. But what I have told you is the some important operations which we will do in a day-to-day life. You can see post call. Okay. And you can even contains a detailed description here. Let me check. See, so before you use HTTP client, you need to import Angular HTTP client module.
Yeah.
Understood? What
Yeah.
I'm telling? So in the root app module, they have imported HTTP client module. Okay. Now what you can do, you can just inject your HTTP client. You can see it was injected here, private
Yeah.
HTTP client. Then all the methods, whatever this HTTP client contains, will be available for this HTTP variable. Okay. Then you can
Yeah.
use like this dot HTTP dot get, whatever you want. Understood?
Okay. Yeah.
For that reason, I told what are observables, behavior, subject, so that you will understand the API call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm. Any doubts, Zahira, Anusha, Shekhar, Santosh?
Okay, no problem.
No.
Oh, let us go to next topic. I'll tell you what are services. Okay. Now what happens? Let us create one more component. Okay. And sample component and sample dot component dot ts. Okay. And here sample dot component dot html. And what is the decorator that I'll be using for a component?
Component.
At the rate decorate.
Component
Component.
At the rate component.
And what are the things that will be available inside?
Selector,
Selector.
Selector, sample, okay, and then
template URL,
Template URL.
URL, okay, and it will be
Dot
sample
slash
dot component dot
component dot
ts, okay, and what
ts.
will be, sorry, HTML,
HTML,
yeah. Next, what will be there?
style URLs.
I didn't create
Not
any
required. Not
file, so
required.
not required. Okay, then
Then add the
Export.
class,
Class.
export class,
export class. What is the class
class
name?
name.
Sample component.
Sample component.
component.
Okay. Now I want to use ng on init lifecycle hook. What should I do?
ng on it, implement ng on it,
Implement on
ng on it,
init. Okay.
On
And it provides
and
method
method we
called
have to mention.
ng on.
ng on it,
And what is the return type of this method?
right.
Void, because it's not returning anything. Okay. Now
Yes.
I want to make an API call here. Whenever any component is created, what we should do?
Declared in
module
component.
does.
Declared in
Module TS.
modules.
Module file. Okay.
Declaration.
Let me declare it here and then import it
What
here.
statement?
Okay. Now I'll go to my component. Now what I want to do, I want to make one API call. Okay. So what are the steps that are used for making API call?
First creating the class, declaring the component.
We
Next.
already done, right?
Okay, done.
Already declared. Now what?
Next.
Want to make an API call. What is the thumb rule? API call means it's an HTTP.
Okay,
Yes or no?
HTTP.
Which is used for making API call in Angular?
HTTP.
HTTP client.
Client.
What is used? HTTP client.
HTTP client.
In order to use HTTP client, what we should do?
Constructor.
We need to inject it into the constructor.
Constructor.
Okay.
Okay, inject in the
Constructor I will take. How to inject it? This is the syntax of a constructor. Okay, how to inject it? I'll create one variable name, public or the private, and then I'll specify which I will inject HTTP client. Okay, and what if I want to make a get call? What should I do?
This dot.
This dot
Sample.
HTTP
HTTP dot
get
and we need to give the URL here. Okay, the same URL. Let me ping it here.
After taking the value from.
Okay, let me give the same URL. Then what should I do?
After that, we are sending the updating values.
We need to subscribe since the return type of this get method is an observable. Okay, we need to subscribe. Then only we'll get successful response.
Okay, successful response.
Okay. Console.log of. Suppose if it is an error, then what will happen?
Else block.
Else block. One more callback function with comma.
Okay.
One more callback function which takes error scenario. You remember promises, right? Same thing.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if I want to use are you able to see this component in the template? I guess no. Correct? Oh, so if I want to see this template here, what should I do? If I want to see the sample component in the web page, what should I do? I need to inject it into the starting component, right? What is the starting component?
sample.
Add component is the starting component. The selector is the sample. I need to go to the starting component and I'll specify sample selector, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now you can see, right? Now you
Yeah.
can see there are two.
Yeah.
One is in app component. You can clearly see here. One is in app component and one is coming from the sample component, correct?
Yeah.
So if
Yes.
two components are making the same API call, we are writing some redundant piece of code. Am I correct? We are writing some repeated code. Redundant code means repeated code. Am I correct? Yes or no?
Yeah.
In the app
Yes.
component, we are writing the
Yes.
same code, this HTTP client and all. And again, in the sample component, we are writing the same code. Correct? So in
Yeah.
order to
Yes.
not to write this same code, we have one file called services. Okay, we can create our service. We can have methods in that. In that method, we can specify this API call, and that services we can inject into the components and we can use them. Let me show you how to create a services. Okay, let me create in order to create a sample file, service file, we use the syntax called name.service.ts. Okay, and we use one decorator called @injectable decorator for services. What decorator?
Injectable.
At the rate of
Rate of
Injectable.
injectable decorator. Okay, and one second, is the syntax correct? @injectable. Okay, now similarly, how we give the class name? We give export class
Export class.
sample. What is this file? Service file, correct? So you will give
Yes.
export class sample service. Okay, this service can contain some methods. Okay, for example, let me write one method. How to write a function in Angular? How to write a method?
Function name.
Function name. For example, get details. Is it fine?
Yeah.
And this is how we will be writing, correct? Since we
Yeah.
doesn't know any return type, what this function is there, we'll just leave it for time being. Okay. Suppose if I want to make a HTTP call in this service, what is the first thing I should remember? If I want to make an API call, what is the first thing we will be doing? API call. This is the third time I am repeating. If you hear the word API call, what is the first thing that should come into mind?
HTTP client.
HTTP client. In order to
Client.
use HTTP client, what we should do?
Injecting the constructor can create
We
the
need to inject it in the constructor. So let us create one constructor here. Okay. You can use the constructor private HTTP and it is of the type HTTP client. Okay. Now I said we need to use what method for getter? Getters, what we used to do? Which method? Get method we use, correct?
yes.
So this dot
Get
Good.
details.
HTTP dot which
Get
method? Get.
Get.
What we will
URL.
give? URL.
URL.
Okay, let us give the same URL. Okay, now let us return this function. Let us return this HTTP function. So what is the return type of this function now?
Observable.
So since it is returning observable, we can give it as observable, observable of any, because we doesn't know what type of data we are getting, right?
Yeah.
And whenever you create a component, what you will do?
The component. We can declare the component in declaration code.
App module file. You will
App
declare
module,
in the
yes.
declarations of app
Declaration.
module file.
App module.
So the services, there will be one block called providers. Providers means they provide you with some information. That is the meaning. Okay. All the services will come to the providers block.
Services.
Will come to the what block? Providers block. Components, pipes, everything will come to what block? Declaration block. Okay. Modules will come to the import block.
Okay.
Understood? So in the providers block, you will be specifying your service. Okay. Now what you need to do, this service contains one method and in that method is returning this API call. Correct?
Yes.
So this service we can inject at two places, this app component as well as the sample component, in order to explicitly making this. Without explicitly making this, we can just use our service and get the data. Understood?
Yeah.
Okay. Since I have used what keyword here, which decorator,
At the rate of injectable.
which means that it should be injected into the constructor wherever you are using it.
Okay.
Okay. Since you are using at the rate of injectable, this sample service you can inject into your constructor. How to inject it?
By using dot subs.
Dot subscribe is
Subs-
used for getting the current value of an observable. I said you need to inject
Yeah.
it in the constructor. How will you do it? How did you inject the HTTP client?
Okay. HTTP.
You injected like this, right? Similarly, you will inject your service as well. Okay. You'll just replace, you will just give some name for your service. For example, service itself. What is the service name? Sample service, right? So you need to use this service and access this get details method and then you can just subscribe to this method and get the API data. Okay, let me just show you how can you do that.
This time.
Okay, now you use something called this dot. What is the service variable name?
Service.
Service. What is the method inside
Get.
which our API calls were there?
Get.
Get is the HTTP client get method.
Okay.
But
Service.
HTTP client, in which method we have used?
Get detail.
Get details is the method,
Get
right?
detail. Yeah.
Okay. Which
So how to
function
mention
you
get
call?
detail.
You
Get details.
What is the return type of this method?
Observable. Any.
So what we need to do?
Observable.
So dot subscribe.
We need to subscribe to it and then we can get the response.
Response.
Okay. Now
Error response.
console.log of response. And let me just show you. I'll even print one console log here. You can see get details method and you got the response.
Yeah.
Okay. And similarly, the same service you can inject in your sample component as well and you can get the data. How to inject the sample service here?
Services. The constructor.
The constructor. Anything
Yes.
which is denoted with at the rate of injectable means that you need to inject it in your constructor. Okay, that is the thing. So this sample service you can inject in your sample component as well. How to inject it? What do you mean by injection? Just you'll give some alternate name for your sample service or HTTP client, something, right? How will you inject the service? You'll just give some alternate name for your service. What is the service name? What is the service name?
Alternate.
Sample service.
Sample service, correct? You'll give
Sample.
sample service here. And what is the variable you will be creating? Your wish. For example,
Okay.
service. Okay. It is of the type sample service. That's it. Now what you will do? In what method in this service you have the API call? In the get details method, you have the API
Get
call.
details.
It is returning observable. You can see,
Yeah.
right? This service is
So
itself
subscriber.
is returning this get method, correct?
Yes.
So what you need to do? You just need to
Subscribe.
subscribe and get the details. That's it.
Okay.
Are you able to see? It's still not yet there. 1 second. Let me just comment out here. You can see it, right? Response from sample API. Are you able to see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you people understand, or shall I repeat the concepts once again?
Repeat the answer. Yeah.
Okay. Services concept or full API concept as well?
API
Only
concept and run.
Okay. So if you are thinking you need to make API call, what is the first thing that should come to your mind? What should you use in Angular?
HTTP.
Client.
Client. Okay. HTTP client. So you cannot use HTTP client directly in your component. So what you need to do, you need to inject into the constructor. Okay. Injecting is just giving some alternate name. You understood, right? HTTP client. What is the, you have created one variable for that. That's it. This is nothing but creating a variable, right? Public variable name and its type is HTTP client. Okay. This
Okay.
creation, you will do it inside the constructor. This is called injecting.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you will do, HTTP client, you will inject it in your constructor, and we have different types of API calls. Get, post, put, delete, various methods are there. Right now, what I have taught you, I have taught you get method. So what you need to do, this dot, HTTP dot, which method is responsible for getting the API details?
Get method.
Get method. In the get method, what you will give, what is this? The URL
URL.
you want to fetch the data, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
And since the return type of this get method is what?
Observable.
Observable. You need to subscribe to it and get the data from it. Okay. The subscription takes two callback functions. One is for successful call, one is for success, and one is for error scenario.
Okay.
Understood? Okay. If the same API call, you need to repeatedly do it in multiple components, means you are writing some same piece of code everywhere. You shouldn't do that. Instead, what you can do, you can create one service. Okay. The file name that you need to give for the service?
Service, public service, sample service.
Sample.
Service.ts, name.service.ts, sample.service.ts, get details.service.ts. Okay. Services are nothing but with what decorator they are decorated with?
Inject.
At the rate injection.
At the
Injectable.
At the rate of injectable. What is the use of services? They are basically used for sharing some data, correct?
Yes.
Means they have to be used in some components, correct? That's why you are
Yes.
using one decorator called at the rate of injectable, so that these services can be injected into any component and can access the data. Okay. So what does services contain? It contains methods. Okay. What does services contain? It contains some
Methods.
variables and methods.
Method.
Okay, like a class, it contains some variables and methods. Right now, we are creating one dummy method. Okay, this method, whenever it is invoked, it makes this API. Understood? So this service, you will be injecting in your component. Injection means creating it in the constructor, and with this variable, which method is responsible for making this API call?
Getting the record.
Get details method
Get.
is responsible. So this
Yes.
dot service dot get details dot, what is the return type of this method? It is returning what? This observable it is returning. This will get resolved and that value will be passed to this function, right? Wherever it is used. Am I correct? So
Yes.
if I give 5, what is returned? 5 is returned. If I give Anusha, what is returned? String is returned. Suppose if I go this API, this method will get resolved and whatever value it comes, that value will be returned. The value that is returned after this is an observable. That's why we need to subscribe to that method and get the data. Understood?
Yes.
Shall I repeat it once more?
No.
And whenever you create service, where you need to give it? You need to give it in the providers block of app module.
Yes.
Okay, you need to give it in the providers block. And if you want your HTTP client to work, you need to import one module called HTTP client module. Then only they will start working. Got it? Suppose if
Yeah.
you do this, you can definitely see an error. Are you seeing an error?
Yes.
Okay, there was no provider for this HTTP client. You need to give it in a app module. Are you able to see?
Yes. App
In
module.
order to use it, you need to give HTTP client module in the app module. Then only HTTP client will start working. That's it. It is simple. Just practice, you will understand better.
Okay.
Okay. Just understand them, you will practice a lot, you will get it.
Okay.
Okay. Any other doubts?
Yeah.
How to create a pipe? How to create a custom pipe?
Custom file. By using selected.
By using selector. Where does
Custom file.
selector will be present? What do you mean by pipes? What are pipes in
Is
Angular?
transferring the data.
Transforming the data. Then how to create one pipe?
At the rate of pipe. These are the
At the rate of pipe decorator you will be using.
At the rate pipe.
And your class has to implement on what?
Class implement the interface.
Which interface? Pipes will implement on pipe transform interface.
Pipe transform.
What is the method that is available in the pipe transform interface?
Transform method.
Transform method. And wherever you are using this pipe, that value will be get passed to which method?
What's the method?
Transform method, right?
Transform. Yes, transform method.
And you can just return some value from that. Okay. What are structural directives?
Structural directives means these are the 3 types. Init. Star
Star-ng, star-ng for star-ng switch.
Very good. Star-ngif, star-ng for
If
star-ng
star-ng.
switch. Okay. What is the usage of star-ngif?
It is used to check condition.
Check condition.
If you want to
If the condition
enter
is
any
it will be written the
HTML
value.
element based on a condition, then you will use
star-ng.
what is the usage of star-ng for?
iterative iterative over array elements from the over array.
If you want to iterate over an array of elements, correct?
Elements from the array. Yes, it is in the
In the
single inputs.
template, basically, correct?
Right.
In the TS file, you can use for each, filter, map, normal for loop. But in the HTML, if you
Yeah.
want to iterate, then we have star ng for. Okay. And what is a directive? What is the definition of a directive?
Custom HTML
Custom
tags for the
HTML.
directives.
HTML tags.
Directive.
The
Custom
custom
HTML.
HTML tag is known as a directive.
Directive.
And what is the usage of ng template?
The template. And the template means if you give the two properties to the same value,
No.
the template. The template. The template means okay, ng container I said.
You said ng container.
Yes, yes. ng template.
If you want to render some template based on a condition, for example,
Okay.
star ng if is not satisfied in the else condition, if you want to render some template, then you will be using
Yes.
what? ng template with
And the,
render.
yes, if you execution is false, it will be used for the reference variable template we are using. HTML.
You people understood, right? What is the usage of ng container and ng template? When to use ng container?
And you container
Adding
for
both conditions. If
suppose
and
if
for.
you assign the two ng compound ng init and ng the assignment two elements to the single variable, that is removing, we will get the padding problem. For removing purpose, we are using ng container.
No. So if you are trying to use two structural directives, star ng for and star ng switch on the same HTML element, it gives us an error. We need to apply only one structural directive for one HTML element, correct? So if you use
Yeah.
div, you will get a padding issues. So you need not to mention div and all. You can just mention it like you can use ng container. It just acts as a placeholder. Okay. It just acts as a
Okay.
placeholder. It applies that condition. If it is true, inside content will get rendered. Otherwise, no. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Practice these services, okay, and these observables. If you learn observable, then life will be easier for you. You will be able to understand anything. Okay. Practice these observables. What do you mean by service? Subscribing to that, these behavior subjects, and come back for the tomorrow's class. Okay.
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 Yeah. So without practice, it's gonna time waste. Even if you listen the class, it's of no use. Practice only makes you perfect. Okay. Just practice and come back for tomorrow's class.
Okay.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.